In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial from my group on how to cut this stylish wrap gown with pleats or gathers at the lower part. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button. So to start, I'm going to cut this pattern in a miniature form because cutting this on a pattern paper will take a lot of pattern paper. So I'll do an illustration of this. So first, let's say this is my shoulder to bust line, and I'll be using the next line as my shoulder to under bust line. So for this pattern at the back, you can decide not to mark the under bust, but I'll just go ahead to mark it. Now after marking this, I'll mark the shoulder to waistline. Now the next step is to mark your hip point. So to get your hip point is about 7 inches after your waistline. If you're a much taller person, use 8 inches. Now this pattern paper is the full length of this dress. Let's say it's the full length of this dress, and I'm going to go ahead to draw out a straight line on that part. Now after I'm done outlining that, I'll just go ahead to label this as bust, under bust, waist, hip point, and gown length, right? So the next step is to go ahead to get your full length, because you're going to be minusing the your dress, that is starting from the hip point. That is your full length. Get your full length and also measure your shoulder to hip point. Now whatever you have, you minus your shoulder to hip point from the full length of this dress. Now you'll be cutting out the rest in form of a pleat or gathers. After this, I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2. Now from this point, you add half inch because you're adding a sleeve to it. Come down by 1 inch for your shoulder slope and mark your basic neckline of 3 by 1 inch. So after marking this, I'm going to place my ruler and I will connect. The next step is to connect from my shoulder slant to my neckline. Now after marking this, you're going to find your chest line. To get that is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, and I'll draw a straight line. So we are working on a miniature pattern. Now you mark back what you have on your shoulder, which is your shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch, because this dress has a sleeve. Now at the armhole, you're going to divide what you have there into 2 equal parts, come out by half inch. On the chest line, you will mark your bust circumference divided by 4. Now connect from your bust circumference divided by 4 to the half inch at the armhole and to the upper part. Please sorry for the noise at the background of this video. It is actually coming from my neighbors. So I'll just go ahead and connect this. Now for this pattern, you don't need a dart. Mark your bust circumference and add your sewing allowance. Now just add half inch or 1 inch. You don't need too much sewing allowance. Also mark your under bust circumference divided by 4 and mark your sewing allowance. You can also leave that if you don't want to. You can just leave your under bust and just mark the waistline and add your sewing allowance if you don't want to mark your under bust. Now mark your hip circumference divided by 4 and add your sewing allowance. Now I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect this all the way to the lower part of this pattern to the hip point. That is where you're going to stop. Now this other part of this pattern, you just extend what you have on the hip down, because you're still going to cut it out and you're going to replace it with a pleat or a gathers at that lower part. So now I'm just going to blend this out and I'll cut it out. So after cutting it out, we'll move over to drafting the upper part of this pattern. Now if you don't want to get your pattern to the hip point, you can just go up by 1 inch from the hip line. But looking at what we have there, it looks like something close to the hip point. So you can use 6 inches after your waistline if you don't want it to go down all the way to the hip. Now on this pattern, I'll place another pattern on it, right? Then I'm going to add extra inches in front. Now if you're a plus size, please go ahead to add extra 4 to 5 inches to your wrap dress in front. If you're on the slimmer side, you can use 3 to 4 inches. This is just to enable one side of your dress to go over to the other side, and you can easily attach a rope to tie it to form your wrap. So what I'll do is just to trace out the side of this pattern. So I'll just go ahead and I'll trace this out. So after tracing this out, we'll now work on the other side. So mark your neckline. If you notice, the wrap came down like towards the bust, close to the under bust, so you can just mark in between your bust and your under bust line. Right now, from the neckline we have here, you go ahead to like slant it all the way going towards that side. Also remember that whatever you slant, you're also going to add like a collar to it, like a little band round the neckline of your dress. So this is what you're just going to cut out, and I'm going to go ahead to slant or cut this out. Whatever you're cutting should be on fold, and I'll cut this open. Now I'll place each pattern facing each side. So I cut out the back pattern on fold, and this is the two sides of my pattern. I'll place it facing each other this way, and I'm going to go ahead to pin it so that I can easily explain how to like add the gathers and the rest to the pattern. Now after placing your pattern and you're not okay with what you have on the wrap area, if you feel the neckline is a bit close, just like I have, you can always go ahead to readjust. There's always room for readjustment before going ahead to cut out your main piece. So I'm just going to slant this, and I'll be placing each other this way. Now this is what I have, and I'll go ahead to like hold it down at the neckline. I'll go ahead to measure what you have on this part all the way to the back neckline and round. Now you're going to be attach something like a band to that side at the collar. So over here you're going to cut out your piece of fabric which you'll be attaching here. So this will be going underneath, one will be going underneath the other one, like you're going to create an opening on one side. So you're going to attach your rope on both sides. Make sure it is long enough to cross over. So you're going to have an opening at the under bust or towards the waistline of your pattern. So that rope is supposed to like go around, and then you're going to tie it, right? So let me just fix it back. You're supposed to have like an opening when you're stitching your pattern by the side. You're going to leave little openings to the side so that you can pass that rope. Now you can now get that part that you minus. You remember when we were cutting out this pattern, we measured our full length and took out our shoulder to hip point from it. Now the remaining length, let's say your gown length is 30 inches and your waist to hip point is 20. If you take out 22 from 30 inches, you will have 8 inches. So that 8 inches, you cut it in form of a long fabric, let's say about 3 yards, and add your like folding allowance to it, and then you're going to fold it all the way around towards the wrap inside this way. So after that, you just go ahead to attach it and pass your rope underneath, and then take it to the side and you can tie it down. Also remember to attach a fabric to your collar.